it's self-love, cause some have been with love. That's keeping her from love, maybe an ex-lover, or could be a father. I don't know, all I can tell how she relates to me. But I would give all of my heart if she would just believe. She don't know love, I love you. And she don't know love is right here. Oh, she don't know love, I love you. Love is far away from the pain that I see in her eyes. But all of that will change when she's mine. It's more than sexual. I'm a reflection of the feeling that's in your soul. It's more than magical. Girl, let me take you on a journey that you should know. Don't let the pain from your past keep you from what you're looking for. I promise to give all my heart. I'm the one that you adore. She don't know. Can you tell me the real man? The one that love you and protect your heart. Don't let your pain destroy love. Oh, pain that I see in her eyes. But all of that would change when she's mine.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, YouTube. It's been a minute. It's going to be more minutes, but I had time this morning and I just wanted to come. And we finished our last book, The Power of Now. And I told you guys I had 2 more books from Eckhart. So yesterday I was sitting here. What did I do with the other one? And I looked at both of them. One of them is called Stillness Speaks. And this one is like a bunch of short quotes and stuff. And I was going to do it, but I don't think I'm going to do that one. Oh, it's not that I don't think, I know, because I already thought about it. I am going to start this one today. If you are new to my channel, my name is Organized Chaos. Hey, y'all. Hey. And yeah, my channel has evolved, elevated, transformed into a mindful space. And on my mindful journey that I kind of started almost maybe 2 years now, 2-ish so years, I come, I read some things, have some conversations. And so this one today is, we're still Eckhart. I was so very impressed. If you missed it, all of the chapters from The Power of Now is on my Elevation station. But this one today, we are going to start a new earth. I kind of skimmed through it a little bit yesterday, and I was like, I want to read that one to my people on the tube. So here we are. Hey, y'all. Hey, I'm going to get started. I can only do like a chapter because I still got stuff to do today, and I don't promise that I'll be back next weekend. Life is a little different right now. So I come to you when I can. I appreciate when you can tune in live with me. And that's it. That's all. Pretty simple, huh? All right. So I'm excited about this one, obviously. It's a little smile on my face. So this one is called The Flowering of Human Consciousness. Evocation. Earth. 114 million years ago. One morning. Oh, wait. Before I start, I want to tell you. So the book that I'm reading from, it is the 10th anniversary edition. And this edition was released in 2015. So that means this book was written actually in the year of our Lord and Savior of 2005. And I do apologize, you guys. My allergies are just always on high alert. And so, yeah, if you see me do this, that's just because allergy season is always for me. It's not like it's always allergy season, and they just decide to do what they want to do, even though I take an allergy pill every day. So yeah, if this was this is the 10th anniversary edition, was written in 2005. This book must have been written in the year of our Lord and Savior 2015, which is the year of our Lord and Savior 2005. So this is the year of 2023. So it's not a new book. But we all awaken at different stages in our consciousness. I'm learning to rely less on actual age, right? There are some things that you will go through in life because of your age, but consciousness is not necessarily an age thing. Some people awaken to their consciousness at an early age. Some people awaken to their consciousness at a later age in life, in our humanness. And I don't necessarily think that everybody awakens to consciousness. Some people don't want to be conscious because it's an interesting space to be in. All right, so this is the flowering of human consciousness, evocation, Earth. 114 million years ago, one morning just after sunrise, the first flower ever to appear on the planet opens up to receive the rays of the sun. Prior to this momentous event that heralds an evolutionary transformation in the life of plants, the planet had already been covered in vegetation for millions of years. The first flower probably did not survive for long, and flowers must have remained rare and isolated phenomena since conditions were most likely not yet favorable for a widespread flowering to occur. One day, however, a critical threshold was reached, and suddenly there would have been an explosion of coloring sent all over the planet if a perceiving consciousness had been there to witness it. That reminds me of the saying, if a tree falls in the forest, if no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? It does. Just because nobody witnessed the sound doesn't mean that the tree didn't fall. And you know what I'm saying. Much later, those delicate and fragrant beings we call flowers would come to play an essential part in the evolution of consciousness of another species. Humans would increasingly be drawn to and fascinated by them as the consciousness of human beings developed. Flowers were most likely the first thing they came to value that had no I'm sorry, y'all. I'm stuck on a big word. Utilitarian. Haha. Sound it out. Purpose for them. That is to say, was not linked in some way to survival. They provided inspiration to countless artists, poets, and mystics. Jesus tells us to contemplate the flowers and learn from them how to live. The Buddha is said to have given a silent sermon once during which he held up a flower and gazed at it. After a while, one of those present, a monk called Mahakasayapa, I think that's right, Mahakasyapa, called M. We're going to call M. I don't want to mess it up anymore. Began to smile. He is said to have been the only one who had understood the sermon. According to legend, that smile, that is to say, realization, was handed down to 28 successive masters and much later became the origin of Zen. Seeing beauty in a flower could awaken humans, however briefly, to the beauty that is an essential part of their own innermost being, their true nature. The first recognition of beauty was one of the most significant events in the evolution of human consciousness. Hey, Gordo. Good morning, sunshine. Hey, hey, hey. The feelings of joy and love are intrinsically connected to that recognition. Without our fully realizing it, flowers would become for us an expression and form of that which is most high, most sacred, and ultimately formless within ourselves. Flowers, more fleeting, more ethereal, and more delicate than the plants out of which they emerged, will become like messengers from another realm, like a bridge between the world of physical forms and formless. They not only have a scent that was delicate and pleasing to humans, but also brought a fragrance from the realm of spirit. Using the word enlightenment in a wider sense than the conventionally accepted one, we could look upon flowers as the enlightenment of plants. Any life form in any realm, mineral, vegetable, animal, or human, can be said to undergo enlightenment. It is, however, an extremely rare occurrence since it is more than an evolutionary progression. It also implies a discontinuity in its development, a leap to an entirely different level of being, and most important, a lessening of materiality. That is the big thing. I think bigger than the materiality in the year of our Lord 2023 is this social piece, right? This social need for likes and clicks and views. That is even taking more than materiality. It used to just be about money that we were unconscious and unaware. But now we are out here doing flips and tricks for likes and view. Like it's the same thing, just a different currency, right? It's not necessarily financial anymore, even though financials do have you doing some crazy things. It's the clout of it all in the year of 2023. The clout has changed the game. What could be heavier and more impenetrable than a rock, the densest of all forms? And yet, some rocks undergo a change in their molecular structure, turn into crystals, and so become transparent to the light. Some carbons, under inconceivable heat and pressure, turn into diamonds, and some heavy minerals into other precious stones. Most crawling reptilians, the most earthbound of all creatures, have remained unchanged for millions of years. Some, however, grew feathers and wings and turned into birds, thus defying the force of gravity that had held them for so long. They didn't become better at crawling or walking, but transcended crawling and walking entirely. Since time Immemorial flowers, crystals, precious stones, and birds have held special significance for the human spirit. Like all life forms, they are, of course, temporary manifestations of the underlying one life, one consciousness. Their special significance and the reason why humans feel such fascination for and affinity with them can be attributed to their ethereal quality. Once there is a certain degree of presence, of still and alert attention in human beings' perceptions, they can sense the divine life essence, the one indwelling consciousness or spirit in their own essence, and so love it as themselves. Until this happens, however, most humans see only the outer forms. I call them the avatars. All of these things are avatars for me, unaware of the inner essence, just as they are unaware of their own essence and identity, only, excuse me, with their own physical and psychological form. In the case of a flower, a crystal, precious stone, or bird, however, even someone with little or no presence can occasionally sense that there is more there than the mere physical existence of that form, without knowing that this is the reason why he or she is drawn toward it, feels an affinity with it. Because of its ethereal nature, its form obscures the indwelling spirit to a lesser degree than is the case with other life forms. The exceptions to this are all newborn life forms, babies, puppies, kittens, lambs, and so on. They are fragile, delicate, not yet firmly established in materiality. And you can exchange materiality for clout in the year of 2023. An innocence, a sweetness, and beauty that are not of this world still shines through them. They delight even relatively insensitive humans. So when you are alert and contemplate a flower, crystal, or bird without naming it mentally, it becomes a window for you into the formless. There is an inner opening, however slight, into the realm of spirit. This is why these three enlightened life forms have played such an important part in the evolution of human consciousness since ancient times. Why, for example, the jewel in the lotus flower is a central symbol of Buddhism, and a white bird, the dove, signifies the Holy Spirit in Christianity. They have been preparing the ground for a more profound shift in planetary consciousness that is destined to take place in the human species. This is the spiritual awakening that we are beginning to witness now. The purpose of this book. Is humanity ready for a transformation of consciousness? An inner flowering so radical and profound that compared to it, the flowering of plants, no matter how beautiful, is only a pale reflection? Can human beings lose the density of their conditioned mind structures and become like crystals or precious stones, so to speak, transparent to the light of consciousness? Can they defy the gravitational pull of materialism and materiality and rise above identification with form that keeps the ego in place and condemns them to imprisonment within their own personality? The possibility of such a transformation has been the central message of the great wisdom teachings of humankind. The messengers, Buddha, Jesus, and others, not all of them known, were humanity's early flowers. They were precursors, rare and precious beings, A widespread flowering was not yet possible at that time, and their message became largely misunderstood and often greatly distorted. That's exactly what when he puts in Jesus, I thought about church. I just thought about my relationship with church. I'm unchurched now. But this type of teaching is not the type of teaching that I've ever seen or felt in church. Church teaching is about the carnal man, and it has its place. But when church teaching doesn't tap into your consciousness and speak to that part, that is what was missing for me. Even though I wasn't on I think my life has always been on a consciousness trajectory, even when I was unconscious. It was meant for me because I'm here to get here. I just was not aware. I would get uncomfortable in situations. I could be awake in situations and learned lessons in those moments. But being mindful and being conscious is not something that I ever learned in church. It was not a way that I ever learned to look at the Bible. I was taught that the Bible was literal to a degree. It wasn't about consciousness. And when he says in here, the messengers, Buddha, Jesus, and others, not all of them known, were humanity's early flowers. That's like a light bulb moment for me. Yes, like I see it now. They were precursors, rare and precious beings. A widespread flowering was not yet possible at that time. And I don't think that widespread flowering is ever going to be possible, right? This book that I'm reading from is from 2005. Yes, it was on Oprah. Yes, I was even aware in the year of 2005. I was here. I was a part of this life experience on earth, but I wasn't awakened to consciousness yet. My consciousness came about like knowingly somewhere in 2020, honestly, because of the pandemic. I'm not even gonna front. Like that is what evolved. That is when my evolution, I can like be aware of that transformation of mind space for me. And so a widespread flowering, I don't think will ever be possible. I just don't see it happening in our lifetime or anybody else's. A widespread flowering was not yet possible at that time, and their message became largely misunderstood and often greatly distorted still to this day. That message is still distorted through prosperity preachers, through your faves who never say anything that hurts your inner feelings or makes you feel a way about who you are as a human being and gets you to tap into your essence as a God being, right? It's all about carnality. And a lot of it is about profitability, just to keep it a buck and a bean in a buck. It certainly did not transform human behavior, except in a small minority of people still. Is humanity more ready now than at the time of those early teachers? Nope. And nope. You can look at social media to tell you that no, humanity is still out here for the foolishness. Humanity is still out here for the glamorization. Humanity is still out here for the, especially on YouTube, child, and this whole beef sector doxing and all of that. That's what humanity wants. If you look, those are the channels that are popping on and popping. Like they get the most clicks and the views. The most sensational of us all is where everybody wants to be. That's what humanity is. They're not ready because it's not exciting. You might find it boring to be conscious, right? To be mindful, to be accountable. What? We got to be accountable for the life that we live. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is humanity ready now than at the time of those early teachers? Why should this be so? What can you do, if anything, to bring about or accelerate this inner shift? What is it that characterizes the old egoic state of consciousness? And by what signs is the new emerging consciousness recognized? I'm sorry. These and other essential questions will be addressed in this book. More important, this book itself is a transformational device that has come out of the arising new consciousness. The ideas and concepts presented here may be important, but they are secondary. They are no more than signposts pointing toward awakening. As you read, a shift takes place within you. That makes me smile. This book's main purpose is not to add new information or beliefs to your mind or to try to convince you of anything, but to bring about a shift in consciousness. That is to say, to awaken. In that sense, this book, this channel, this video is not, if it's not interesting, interesting means you can keep your distance, play around with ideas and concepts in your mind, agree to disagree. This book, this channel, this video is about you. That makes me so happy on the inside, y'all. I don't know why, but it does. If only one person watches this, I'm okay with that. I might be that one person, child, because I'm reading to y'all and to myself at the same time today. But I'm excited. This book, this channel, this video is about you. It will change your state of consciousness, or it might be meaningless. It can only awaken those who are ready. Not everyone is ready yet, but many are. And with each person who awakens, the momentum in the collective consciousness grows, and it becomes easier for others. If you don't know what awakening means, read on. Listen. Only by awakening can you know the true meaning of that word. A glimpse is enough to initiate the awakening process, which is irreversible. For some, that glimpse will come while reading this book. For many others who may not even have realized it, the process has already begun. This book will help them recognize it. For some, it may have begun through loss or suffering. For others, through coming into contact with a spiritual teacher or teaching, through reading The Power of Now, or some other spiritually alive and therefore transformational book, or any combination of the above. If the awakening process has begun in you, the reading of this book will accelerate and intensify it. An essential part of the awakening is the recognition of the unawakened you. The ego, as it thinks, speaks, and acts, as well as the recognition of the collectively conditioned mental processes that perpetuate the unawakened state. That is why this book shows the main aspects of the ego and how they operate in the individual as well as the collective. This is important for two related reasons. The first is that unless you know the basic mechanics behind the workings of the ego, you won't recognize it. And it will trick you into identifying with it again and again. This means it takes you over, an imposter pretending to be you. The second reason is that the act of recognition itself is one of the ways in which awakening happens. When you recognize the unconsciousness in you, that which makes the recognition possible is the arising consciousness, is awakening. You cannot fight against the ego and win, just as you cannot fight against darkness. That's a word. I'm going to read that again for y'all. I'm not even going to explain it. Just listen. Let it hit you. You cannot fight against the ego and win, just as you cannot fight against darkness. The light of consciousness is all that is necessary. You are the light. Our inherited dysfunction. If we look more deeply into humanity's ancient religions and spiritual traditions, we will find that underneath the many surface differences, there are two core insights that most of them agree on. The words they use to describe those insights differ, yet they all point to a twofold fundamental truth. The first part of this truth is the realization that the normal state of mind of most human beings contain a strong element of what we might call dysfunction or even madness. Certain teachings at the heart of Hinduism perhaps come closest to seeing this dysfunction as a form of collective mental illness. They call it Maya, the veil of delusion. Ramana Maharshi, one of the greatest Indian sages, bluntly states, the mind is Maya. Buddhism uses different terms. According to the Buddha, the human mind in its normal state generates dukkha, which can be translated as suffering, unsatisfactoriness, or just plain misery. He sees it as a characteristic of the human condition. Wherever you go, whatever you do, says the Buddha, you will encounter dukkha, and it will manifest in every situation sooner or later. It reminds me of a saying, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, you see a reflection of yourself. Whatever you do, it is a reflection of you. According to Christian teachings, the normal collective state of humanity is one of original sin. Sin is a word that has been greatly misunderstood and misinterpreted. Literally translated from the ancient Greek into which the New Testament was written, to sin means to miss the mark, as an archer who misses the target. So to sin means to miss the point of human existence. Y'all, this is just like, I don't know about y'all, but it's just like my soul is like, yes, get it out. Yes, tell the truth. Yes, be the light. It means to live unskillfully, blindly, and thus to suffer and cause suffering. Again, the term, stripped of its cultural baggage and misinterpretations, points to the dysfunction inherent in the human condition in every one of us. Sin. We miss the mark. All of us. You point your finger at somebody else for their sins. These three are pointing right back at you, boo. The achievements of humanity are impressive and undeniable. We have created sublime works of music, literature, painting, architecture, and sculpture. More recently, science and technology have brought about radical changes in the way we live and have enabled us to do and create things that would have been considered miraculous even 200 years ago. No doubt, the human mind is highly intelligent, yet, excuse me, yet its very intelligence is tainted by madness, by sin. Science and technology have magnified the destructive impact that the dysfunction of the human mind has upon the planet, other life forms, and upon humans themselves. That is why the history of the 20th century is where that dysfunction, that collective insanity can be most clearly recognized. Every single day, social media shows you a reflection of who we are as human beings. Don't point your finger at what you see. Look inside yourself and realize you're a part of the madness too. All of it. A further factor is that this dysfunction is actually intensifying and accelerating. The First World War broke out in 1914. Destructive and cruel wars, motivated by fear, greed, and the desire for power, have been common occurrences throughout human history, as had slavery, torture, and widespread violence inflicted for religious and ideological reasons. Humans suffered more at the hands of each other than through natural disasters. Human beings are terrible. Our humanness won't just let us be until we wake up our consciousness. By the year 1914, however, the highly intelligent human mind had invented not only the internal combustion engine, but also bombs, machine guns, submarines, flamethrowers, and poison gas. Intelligence in the service of madness. In static trench warfare in France and Belgium, millions of men perished to gain a few miles of mud. When the war was over in 1918, the survivors looked in horror and incomprehension upon the devastation left behind. 10 million human beings killed and many more maimed or disfigured. Never before had human madness been so destructive in its effect, so clearly visible. Little did they know that this was only the beginning. By the end of the century, the number of people who died a violent death at the hand of their fellow humans would rise to more than 100 million. They died not only through wars between nations, but also through mass exterminations and genocide, such as the murder of 20 million class enemies, spies, and traitors in the Soviet Union under Stalin, or the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. They also died in countless smaller internal conflicts, such as the Spanish Civil War or during the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia, when a quarter of that country's population was murdered. We only need to watch the daily news on television or YouTube or Instagram or TikTok sometimes. I don't use TikTok, so I don't know. To realize that the madness, it hasn't ended. It's elevated. The madness has not abated. That is, it is continuing into the 21st century. Another aspect of the collective dysfunction of the human mind is the unprecedented violence that humans are inflicting on other life forms and the planet itself. The destruction of oxygen producing forests and other plant and animal life, ill treatment of animals in factory farms, and poisoning of rivers, oceans, and air, driven by greed, ignorant of their connectedness to the whole. Humans persist in behavior that, if continued unchecked, can only result in their own destruction. Everything you do to somebody else is coming back to you. That is a fact. How it turns around and boomerangs back, that is not a you don't know. But that energy that you release, however you release it, it comes back to you. Becoming conscious and being mindful of the energy that you produce is the only way to ensure that we have a better future for generations to come. If not, we will quickly destroy what we have sooner than was the universe's plan. It really is up to humanity to want to do better collectively and to stop pointing fingers at others' sins. There is no one that is greater than the other. We are all sinful. We all have flaws. It is our job to do the work, to unpack them, to become the better humans that we can be. But some of us don't want to be better. Some of us enjoy being unconscious, creating conflict and strife, and killing each other, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. It brings some of us joy. And we know it because whether we're the ones that are doing it, we tune into it daily. The collective manifestations of the insanity that lies at the heart of the human condition constitute the greater part of human history. It is to a large extent a history of madness. If the history of humanity were the clinical case history of a single human being, the diagnoses would have to be chronic paranoid delusions, a pathological propensity to commit murder and acts of extreme violence and cruelty against his perceived enemies, his own unconsciousness projected outward, criminally insane, with a few brief, lucid intervals. Fear, greed, and the desire for power are the psychological motivating forces, not only behind warfare and violence between nations, tribes, religions, and ideologies, but also the cause of incessant conflict in personal relationships. They bring about a distortion in your perception of other people and yourself. Through them, you misinterpret every situation, leading to misguided action designed to rid you of fear and satisfy your need for more. A bottomless hole that can never be filled. There will never be enough drama on YouTube for you. You will always click on the most tantalizing gutter of all the videos to laugh and gag at other people's pain. It is important to realize, however, that fear, greed, and the desire for power are not the dysfunction that we are speaking of, but are themselves created by the dysfunction, which is a deep-seated collective delusion that lies within the mind of each and every one of us. A number of spiritual teachings tell us to let go of fear and desire. But those spiritual practices are usually unsuccessful. They haven't gone to the root of the dysfunction. Fear, greed, and desire for power are not the ultimate causal factors. Trying to become a good or better human being sounds like a commendable and high minded thing to do. Yet, it is an endeavor you cannot ultimately succeed in unless there is a shift of consciousness. And that's what I was saying earlier. Church didn't shift my consciousness, but it was something that I needed to get me to where I am today, to bring me to consciousness. It was still part of the plan. It was still part of the learning, of the schooling, of the knowledge that I needed to grow into consciousness. So it has its place. This is because it is still part of the same dysfunction, a more subtle and rarefied form of self-enhancement, of desire for more, and a strengthening of one's conceptual identity, one's self-image. You do not become good by trying to be good, but by finding the goodness that is already within you and allowing that goodness to emerge. But it can only emerge if something fundamental changes in your state of consciousness. The history of communism, originally inspired by noble ideas, clearly illustrates what happens when people attempt to change external reality, create a new earth, without any prior change in their inner reality, their state of consciousness. They make plans without taking into account the blueprint for dysfunction that every human being carries within: the ego, the arising new consciousness. Most ancient religions and spiritual traditions share the common insight that our normal state of mind is marred by a fundamental defect. However, out of this insight into the nature of the human condition, as we may call it, the bad news, arises a second insight, the good news of the possibility of a radical transformation of human consciousness. In Hindu teachings, and sometimes in Buddhism also, this transformation is called enlightenment. In the teachings of Jesus, it is salvation. And in Buddhism, it is the end of suffering. Liberation and awakening are other terms used to describe this transformation. The greatest achievement of humanity is not its works of art, science, or technology, but the recognition of its own dysfunction, its own madness. In the distant past, this recognition already came to a few individuals. A man called Gautama Siddhartha, who lived 2,600 years ago in India, was perhaps the first who saw it with absolute clarity. Later, the title Buddha was conferred upon him. Buddha means the awakened one. At about the same time, another of humanity's early awakened teachers emerged in China. His name was Lao Tzu. He left a record of his teaching in the form of one of the most profound spiritual books ever written, the Tao Te Ching. To recognize one's own insanity is, of course, the arising of sanity, the beginning of healing and transcendence. A new dimension of consciousness had begun to emerge on the planet, a first tentative flowering. Those rare individuals then spoke to their contemporaries. They spoke of sin, of suffering, of delusion. They said, look how you live. See what you are doing, the suffering that you create. They then pointed to the possibility of awakening from the collective nightmare of normal human existence. They showed the way. The world was not yet ready for them, and yet they were a vital and necessary part of human awakening. Inevitably, they were mostly misunderstood by their contemporaries as well as by subsequent generations. Their teachings, although both simple and powerful, became distorted because that's what we do. We try to change and bend things to our will and our way and misinterpreted. In some cases, even as they were recorded in writing by their disciples, over the centuries, many things were added that had nothing to do with the original teachings, but were reflections of a fundamental misunderstanding. Some of the teachers were ridiculed, reviled, or killed. Others came to be worshiped as gods. Teachings that pointed the way beyond the dysfunction of the human mind, the way out of the collective insanity, were distorted and became themselves part of the insanity. I call it circular thinking, right? When you want to shine a light on somebody else's thing and deflect from your own thing, you circularly find a way around your dysfunction and point again, you point that finger at somebody else's dysfunction, somebody else's perceived flaws or slights or human missteps or sin, but never reflect on your own self, your own sin, your own inner man. And then you change the narrative, right? You change what the word actually said and you try to make it more palatable for the masses. That's what church was doing for me. I didn't want palatable for the masses. I wanted direct instructions on how to elevate and transform my life. And I'm getting there. One book, one moment, one day, one awakening at a time. And it is inner work that I have to do for myself. No man can do this work for you. You have to work on yourself. Your favorite preacher can't preach a word good enough to awaken your consciousness. You have to want to do that work. You have to be the light in the dark places. And so religions, to a large extent, became division rather than unifying forces. I hadn't even read that far ahead before I said what I said. Bars. Instead of bringing about an ending of violence and hatred through a realization of the fundamental oneness of all life, they brought more violence, more hatred, more divisions between people, as well as between different religions, and even within the same religion. Because y'all know Christianity got a bunch of different branches. They became ideologies, belief systems people could identify with, and so use them to enhance their false sense of self. Through them, they could make themselves right and others wrong. And you know we love to do that. And thus define their identity through their enemies, the others, the non-believers, or wrong believers, who not infrequently they saw themselves justified in killing. Man made God in his own image. The eternal, the infinite, and unnameable was reduced to a mental idol that you had to believe in and worship as my God or our God. Y'all made God to be like y'all. God is not flawed. God is perfect. The universe is perfect. The universe will continue to do what it does every single moment of every single day that it is, because it is that it is. You are that you are, but you are not God. You are made in God's image. God is inside of you. That energy exists, but you cannot transform that energy into a human being and think that is God. Stop it. Your favorite preacher is not God. Your favorite preacher is a human being, is a man, and flawed and all, just like you. Stop it. And yet, in spite of all the insane deeds perpetuated in the name of religion, the truth to which they point still shines at their core. It still shines, however dimly, through layers upon layers of distortion and misinterpretation. It is unlikely, however, that you will be able to perceive it there unless you have at least already had glimpses of that truth within yourself. Throughout history, there have always been rare individuals who experienced a shift in consciousness and so realized within themselves that towards which all religions point. To describe that non conceptual truth, they then use the conceptual framework of their own religions, their limited mind capacity. Through some of those men and women, schools or movements developed within all major religions that represented not only a rediscovery, but in some cases, an intensification of the light of the original teaching. This is how Gnosticism and mysticism came into existence in early and medieval Christianity. Sufism in the Islamic religion, Hasidism, and Kabbalah in Judaism, Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, Zen and Dzogchen in Buddhism. Most of these schools were iconoclastic. They did away with layers upon layers of deadening conceptualization and mental belief structures. And for this reason, most of them were viewed with suspicion and often hostility by the established religious hierarchies. Unlike mainstream religion, their teachings emphasized realization and inner transformation. It is through those esoteric schools or movements that major religions regained the the transformative power, excuse me, of the, excuse me, y'all. Ooh, I needed some water. It is through those esoteric schools or movements that the major religions regained the transformative power of the original teachings, although in most cases only a small minority of people had access to them. Their numbers were never large enough to have any significant impact on the deep collective unconsciousness of the majority. Over time, some of those schools themselves became too rigidly formalized or conceptualized to remain effective. Spirituality and religion. What is the role of the established religions in the arising of the new consciousness? Many people are already aware of the difference between spirituality and religion. They realize that having a belief system, a set of thoughts that you regard as the absolute truth, does not make you spiritual, no matter what the nature of those beliefs are. In fact, the more you make your thoughts, your beliefs, into your identity, the more cut off you are from the spiritual dimension within yourself. Let me say that again because that's pretty deep. The more you make your thoughts, because your thoughts are not necessarily reality, just so you know. The more you make your thoughts or the things that you believe into your identity, who you are, the more you cut off you are from the spiritual dimension within yourself. Many religious people are stuck at that level. They equate truth with thought. And as they are completely identified with thought or their mind, they claim to be in sole possession of the truth in an unconscious attempt to protect their identity. They don't realize the limitations of thought. Unless you believe or think exactly as they do, you are wrong in their eyes. And in the not too distant past, they would have felt justified in killing you for that. And some people still do. The new spirituality, the transformation of consciousness, is arising to a large extent outside of the structures of the existing institutionalized religions. There were always pockets of spirituality, even in mind dominated religions, although the institutionalized hierarchies felt threatened by them and often tried to suppress them. That's why they don't talk about this stuff in most. I'm not going to say all because I haven't visited them all, but in most religious institutions, they don't do mind work. They just don't do this type of work or teaching. It is not popular to be mindful. It is popular to be judgmental. That is what our society thrives off of, judgment. It just is what it is. Categorizing people, putting people in boxes, pointing fingers at people and telling these people they're right and those people they're wrong, and you deserve all of the things and you deserve none of the things. That is what we thrive off of. A large-scale opening of spirituality outside of religious structures is an entirely new development. In the past, this would have been inconceivable, especially in the West, the most mind-dominated of all cultures, where the Christian church had a virtual franchise on spirituality. Facts. You couldn't just stand up and give a spiritual talk or publish a spiritual book unless you were sanctioned by the church. And if you were not, they would quickly silence you. But now, even within certain churches and religions, there are signs of change. It is heartwarming, and one is grateful for even the slightest signs of openness, such as Pope John Paul II visiting a mosque as well as a synagogue. Partly as a result of the spiritual teachings that have arisen outside the established religions, but also due to an influx of the ancient Eastern wisdom teachings, a growing number of followers of traditional religions are able to let go of identification with forms, dogma, and rigid belief systems and discover the original depth that is hidden within their own spiritual tradition at the same time as they discover the depths within themselves. They realize that how spiritual you are has nothing to do with what you believe, but everything to do with your state of consciousness. This in turn determines how you act in the world and interact with others. Those unable to look beyond form become even more deeply entrenched in their beliefs, that is to say, in their mind. We are witnessing not only an unprecedented influx of consciousness at this time, but also an entrenchment and intensification of the ego. Some religious institutions will be open to the new consciousness. Others will harden their doctrinal positions and become part of all those other man-made structures through which the collective ego will defend itself and fight back. Some churches, sects, cults, or religious movements are basically collective egoic entities, as rigidly identified with their mental positions as the followers of any political ideology that is closed to any alternative interpretation of reality. But the ego is destined to dissolve, and all its ossified structures, whether they be religious or other institutions, corporations, or governments, will disintegrate from within, no matter how deeply entrenched they appear to be. The most rigid structures, the most impervious to change, will collapse first. This has already happened in the case of the Soviet communism. How deeply entrenched, how solid and monolithic it appeared, and yet, within a few years, it disintegrated from within. No one foresaw this. All were taken by surprise. There are many more such surprises in store for us. The urgency of transformation. We have two more sections and then we'll be done. When faced with a radical crisis, when the old way of being in the world, of interacting with each other and with the realm of nature does not work anymore, when survival is threatened by seemingly insurmountable problems, an individual life form or a species will either die or become extinct or rise above the limitations of its condition through an evolutionary leap. It is believed that the life forms on this planet first evolved in the sea. When there were no animals yet to be found on land, the sea was already teeming with life. Then at some point, one of the sea creatures must have started to venture onto dry land. It would perhaps crawl a few inches at first. Then, exhausted by the enormous gravitational pull of the planet, it will return to the water, where gravity is almost non-existent, and where it could live with much greater ease. And then it tried again and again and again, and much later would adapt to life on land, grow feet instead of fins, develop lungs instead of gills. It seems unlikely that a species would venture into such an alien environment and undergo an evolutionary transformation unless it was compelled to do so by some crisis situation. There may have been a large sea area that got cut off from the main ocean, where the water gradually receded over thousands of years, forcing fish to leave their habitat and evolve. Responding to a radical crisis that threatens our very survival, this is humanity's challenge now. The dysfunction of the egoic human mind, recognized already more than 2,500 years ago by the ancient wisdom teachers, and now magnified through science and technology, is for the first time threatening the survival of the planet. Until very recently, the transformation of human consciousness, also pointed to by the ancient teachers, was no more than a possibility realized by a few rare individuals here and there, irrespective of culture or religious background. A widespread flowering of human consciousness did not happen because it was not yet imperative. A significant portion of the Earth's population will soon recognize, if they haven't done so, that humanity is now faced with a stark choice: evolve or die. Evolve or die. A still relatively small but rapidly growing percentage of humanity is already experiencing within themselves the breakup of the old egoic mind patterns and the emergence of a new dimension of consciousness. What is arising now is not a new belief system, a new religion, spiritual ideology, or mythology. We are coming to the end not only of mythologies, but also of ideologies and belief systems. The change goes deeper than the content of your mind, deeper than your thoughts. In fact, at the heart of the new consciousness lies the transcendence of thought, the newfound ability of rising above thought, of realizing a dimension within yourself that is infinitely more vast than thought. You then no longer derive your identity, your sense of who you are, from your incessant stream of thinking that in the old consciousness you take to be yourself. What a liberation to realize that the voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that. The awareness that is prior to thought. The space in which the thought or the emotion or sense perception happens. Ego is no more than this identification with form, with which primarily means thought forms. If evil has any reality, and it has a relative, not an absolute reality, this is also its definition: complete identification with form, physical forms, thought forms, emotional forms. This results in a total unawareness of my connectedness with the whole, my intrinsic oneness with every other, as well as with the source. This forgetfulness is original sin, suffering delusion. When this delusion of utter separateness underlies and governs whatever I think, say, and do, what kind of world do I create? To find the answer to this, observe how humans relate to each other, read a history book, or watch the news on television tonight. If the structures of the human mind remained unchanged, we will always end up recreating fundamentally the same world, the same evils, the same dysfunctions. In my 50 plus years of living, I now can see that life is just a big circular reaction, reality of all the things that have happened before. Nothing is new here. All of this is recycled. Everything is recycled. The young people, I know you think that these things are new and it's awakening. It's all history. Learning the history will help you awaken. It will help you change and break these chains that our minds have been captured in. This is our last section. A new heaven and a new earth. The inspiration for the title of this book comes from a Bible prophecy that seems more applicable now than at any other time in human history. It occurs in both the Old and New Testament and speaks of the collapse of the existing world order and the arising of a new heaven and a new earth. We need to understand here that heaven is not a location, but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. This is the esoteric meaning of the word, and this is also its meaning in the teachings of Jesus. Earth, on the other hand, is the outer manifestation in form, which is always a reflection of the inner. Collective human consciousness and life on our planet are intrinsically connected. A new heaven is the emergence of a transformed state of human consciousness, and a new earth is its reflection in the physical realm. Since human life and human consciousness are intrinsically one with the life of the planet, as the old consciousness dissolves, there are bound to be synchronistic, geographic, and climate natural upheavals in many parts of the world, of the planet, some of which we are already witnessing now. That is the end of chapter 1. When I come back, we will dig into chapter 2, Ego, the current state of humanity. I want to thank Eckhart for writing this book for my consciousness journey. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you are live or if you are on the replay, I want to thank God and the universe just because. I love you and I appreciate you for being here. You all have a blessed Sunday and I'll catch you later. Hey, beautiful Shalom. I'll see you later. You all have a blessed day.